Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe Party, ALDE, President Sir Graham Watson has cautioned that a Turkish prosecutor's controversial attempt to silence media critical of the government by asking a ministry to disallow the media outlets from using the state's communications infrastructure could cause fatal results for the Turkish economy. Ankara Public Prosecutor Serdar Coşkun, who is responsible for the Bureau for Crimes Against the Constitutional Order, sent a document to the Turkish Satellite Communications Company, TÜRKSAT, Directorate General, which falls under the Ministry of Transportation, Maritime Affairs and Communications, on April 27 asking it to prevent the state-owned satellite connection from being used by certain media outlets. The Turkish media reported that the prosecutor's demand came as part of an investigation into claims about the parallel structure, and particularly targets the media outlets inspired by the Gülen movement, also known as the Hizmet movement. The parallel structure is a term invented by Erdoğan after a massive corruption scandal to refer to members of the Gülen movement, which is inspired by Turkish Islamic scholar Fethullah Gülen. The pro-government jurists' attempt to censor critical media outlets has been attracting strong criticism and condemnations both domestically and abroad. In a tweet he posted regarding Coşkun's unconstitutional request to silence critical media outlets, Watson said, Ankara's prosecutors move to silence free media, that is, their Zaman Daily and Zaman Aylut TV, among other, could prove fatal to Turkey's economy, as has happened in Russia. Another reaction came from Britain's National Union of Journalists, NUJ, representative to the European Federation of Journalists, Barry White, on Tuesday, emphasizing the significance of democracy and people's right to obtain information. In his remarks to Today's Zaman, White stressed that one of the pillars of democracy is the open and wide debate of ideas and information that should be accessible to all, continuing by saying that if the claims are true, it is an attack on media freedom and that the press is being threatened ahead of the upcoming parliamentary election. If reports that the Ministry of Transportation, Maritime Affairs and Communications has been asked to stop critical media outlets from using the state's communications infrastructure are true, this represents a serious blow to democracy and the public's right to know and be informed. It is crude state censorship. It is also significant that this attack on the freedom of the press is being threatened in the run-up to the general election, White concluded. Despite its repetitive statements against the so-called parallel structure, the government has failed to offer any evidence indicating such a structure ever exists within the state since December 2013. When senior members of the government of then Prime Minister and current President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan were implicated in a massive corruption scandal. Moreover, there is no court decision classifying the movement as an armed terrorist organization, as is claimed by pro-government circles. The reason behind the controversial and unconstitutional move by the prosecutor, which comes shortly before June's general election, is allegedly the anti-government media outlets creating polarization in society and terrorizing people. If the prosecutor's request is approved, opposition parties will be deprived of the means to conduct their election campaigns for the June election because most of the media in Turkey, controlled by the Justice and Development Party, AK Party, government, provides little or no coverage of the election campaigns of opposition parties. MHP leader, Turkey gradually moving toward dictatorship. Reactions against Coşkun's controversial move to censor the Turkish media also continue domestically. Speaking on the issue on Tuesday, opposition Nationalist Movement Party, MHP, leader Devlet Bahçeli said the prosecutor's request shows that Turkey has been gradually moving towards a dictatorship. After the June 7 parliamentary election, those people, the government and all those state officials who engaged in unlawful practices, will be held accountable for their deeds, Bahçeli said. Deputy Özgür Özel from the main opposition Republican People's Party, CHP, also lashed out at the prosecutor for his unlawful request, saying that the government basically wants to mute the voice of the media outlets that put the major corruption and bribery investigations that became public on December 17 and 25, 2013, on the public agenda. Özel said the prosecutor's request to mute the critical media actually originated from the palace, Referring to Erdogan's newly built presidential palace in Ankara, Özal said the CHP became very disturbed by the prosecutor's request, adding that he hopes the citizens will mute the voice of the repressive and autocratic AK Party regime, which cannot tolerate any kind of critical voice at all. Just 19 days are left, until the June 7th election, for the salvation of the free media in the country. We don't find what is currently happening just and condemn this vehemently. Izmir Journalists Association, IG, President Miskit Dikman said the prosecutor's attempt is very serious in terms of freedom of the press and freedom of expression. This is an attempt reminiscent of the military coup eras, and this concretely shows that the government wants to shape and intimidate critical media outlets, Dikman said. Manisa Bar Association President Ali Aslan said Coşkun's move is completely unlawful. Coşkun's order has no legal basis at all. No public prosecutor can send a document to ask for the closure of any media outlet or suspension of media outlets' broadcast or publication without a court order. Within this scope, Prosecutor Coşkun does not have such an authority, and the document written by him is unlawful. In the document, Coşkun allegedly asked the ministry to prevent the statements of Gülen, whom he referred to as the leader of a terrorist organization, from reaching the public through the media using state means. He said Gülen delivers his messages and instructions to his followers throughout media outlets inspired by him, while recalling that there are ongoing investigations in many provinces against individuals from the parallel structure. No evidence has been brought forward and no court ruling exists in Turkey proving that the Hizmet movement is an armed terrorist organization. Gülen. The inspiration behind the Gülen movement, which promotes inter-religious dialogue and educational activities, has been living in self-imposed exile in Pennsylvania since 1999 and has not returned to the country since then. Before Erdogan's relations with the movement soured after a corruption probe became public in 2013, he and many members of his government valued the movement's educational activities very highly. They visited Gülen-inspired schools opened all around the world by Turkish entrepreneurs and praised their services and quality of education.